All right, welcome to our live Q&A. It's Wednesday, September 8th. My name is Brendan Lyons. I work with Sessionwire, and I'm very excited to be joined by Sessionwire founder Robin LeBeau. Lots to talk about today. You know, if you have questions, you can throw them in the comment section. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. Facebook in two places, on our Sessionwire page and our Sessionwire users group. So, like I said, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to all of them. We're just going to be talking about... I can hear myself talking Robin's stream. We're just going to... Yeah, it's okay.
It was muted.
We're going to be talking about the genesis of Sessionwire and where it's headed, and Robin's background and a bunch of things like that in between, answering some questions if we can. So give us a thumbs up in the comments if the audio is good and the video is good. Give us a thumbs down if you don't like what we're talking about. You know, we can negotiate. Without further ado, I will bring Robin into the conversation. Here's Robin from Vancouver, BC.
Hi, everybody.
It's always a little strange talking to nobody really on these things, but
it's a little strange.
Yeah.
I did have the comment up, but for some reason it didn't want to mute for me, so I'll leave it off for now. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll try to keep an eye on the comments here. We got a bunch of people saying hello. Edmund from Montreal, KR from Toronto, Cindy, Godmama. Cindy and I, we touch base every couple of weeks on Sessionwire. Sean DeLong, Byron Wagner from LA, Daniel, Daniel from Montreal, John Robert from, he just said hey.
Hey.
Yeah, lots of people tuning in from KO from Chicago. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we're going to try to do live streams like this at least on a monthly basis. We, you know, and we'll talk about this as well, but the whole kind of thing about Sessionwire is building community, and it's important for us to stay in touch with our users. And I personally like this kind of like live feeling where people can ask questions and have a say in what's going on. So, yeah. Colin,
like it too.
Robin. Yeah. What's that? Like it too?
I do.
Yeah, it's quite enjoyable. Brad Lang from Winnipeg, home province, Manitoba. For anybody that's watching, we are Canadian.
I didn't know you were from Manitoba. How did I not know that?
I'm not sure. I think it's common knowledge around here, but yeah, born and raised in Brandon. So there you go.
I played in Brandon back in the day. That's right there, but we're not going to jump into the road stories right off the top, I don't think.
We should, though, soon. I think that would be good.
Sure.
I've heard lots of I play with lots of people older than me that kind of came up through the music scene in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, and they all have stories about Brandon. So
yeah,
not sure what that says about my hometown, but
it was good. It was, we showed up after a drive right from Kimberley, BC. Yeah, and
wow.
Set up and played without dinner or showers or anything. It was pretty grueling, but anyway.
That's a long drive. It's a long drive.
I posted a thing today, reposted the drum setup video, and I was just saying to all my drummer friends, it's way easier than lugging gear around.
Yep.
Sessionwire is.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We'll get into that in a bit too. I think, you know, an exciting video that we posted today with J.R. Robinson tracking drums with Sessionwire. And for those of you who don't know who J.R. Robinson is, he's got his own Wikipedia page. It's a mile long. Go check it out.
It's amazing. And the thing that makes me sad about that is so many people don't know what he's done. So I challenge people when I reposted it to go and check out, you know, his Wikipedia page, or just Google him and see what he's done, because it's absolutely incredible.
It's unbelievable. And, you know, he's such a nice guy too. I say JR and his engineer Steve Sykes, who in his own right has done amazing things and is an incredible guitar player. They spent a lot of time setting up JR's studio to record drums and use Sessionwire and stream video. from a video mixer, and it's quite something. So, yeah.
Well, it's especially the last few months have been amazing with the new version of Sessionwire and everything, and the people that I connect with every day. It boggles my mind. So many people that I've respected from what they've done in the past, and now I'm connecting with them and just chatting with them, and they're thinking that Sessionwire is awesome. So it's been a long journey to get here, but it's very rewarding. I got to say that.
Well, we're going to talk lots about that. I think that lots of people don't understand the journey that Sessionwire has been through over the years. And to see it spread. I mean, I've only been around for a year and a half, but to see how it's taken off and to see the people that are using it is just mind blowing. Speaking of Steve Sykes, Steve is in the chat.
Yeah, I saw that. Hi, yeah. Steve.
Steve, we need to catch up. We need to talk about everything that he's been doing. Steve's been working on an album with an incredible pianist, and JR has been off. I'm playing with John Fogerty or something, I think, the other week. So, time to touch base.
I see Sean there. Sessionwire saves lives.
Sure
yes,
does.
Sean, it does.
Absolutely, it does. And we have a viewer from Egypt as well, Nourhan. Oh. So,
hello, Egypt. That's amazing.
Nice to see you.
I have to say, one of the most incredible things daily, I sort of sneak on and I look at the analytics, and I see the countries where people are using Sessionwire, and it just gives me goosebumps. I see people literally all over the world. They're all connecting on Sessionwire, and they're all about making music, and I just love that so much. I hear the stories about people working in New York and in Moscow or Australia and India and all these different places. Egypt now.
Yeah, it's really crazy. It's I remember joining Sessionwire, and one of the first long distance calls that I had was to Australia, and we're streaming audio back and forth to each other like it's nothing. It's like we're next door to each other, streaming audio between our DAWs. It was the strangest thing, and it still hasn't gotten old.
Well, here's the weird thing. We've never met.
That's true. It's very true. Yeah.
And yet, I mean, we know each other, I think, quite well after many long Sessionwire calls and whatever. But the weird thing about it is when you're on a call, after a while, time and space just kind of disappear, and it feels like you're in the same place at the same time, working on the same music, and it's pretty amazing feeling, and it's like that with some of our other staff members too. I think John, I've met once in person. He flew to Vancouver, but other than that, he's been working remotely, and we see each other every day, and it's amazing. It's a different world now, and even with the even with the pandemic and all that, eventually going away, whatever that looks like, or what that actually looks like. But
yeah,
it's never going back to the way that it was.
No,
it's
not, unfortunately. Error. Use keyframe freak. What? 4 seconds or less. No, we're still live on YouTube. Okay, good. Just had to check that.
Put this back up.
But privacy is set to private. Well, that's not good. Sorry.
No.
Timeout.
Unprivate it.
Yeah. Brendan made a boo-boo here. Privacy. Public. There we go. Now we should be live to YouTube as well. If anybody out there has a chance to jump over to YouTube and see if we're live on our channel, would be much appreciated. To get back to what we were talking about, I haven't thought about that in such a long time. It is strange that I've never met anybody on the Sessionwire team face to face in the same room.
Yeah, maybe you're tall. I don't know. It's gonna be weird. We'll have a bash one of these days and get everybody together in the same place. But when we were starting Sessionwire, one of the things that we talked about is if we're gonna be selling remote software, then we should be a remote company.
Yeah.
You know, and we should, I always say it, eat our own dog food, use Sessionwire all the time as much as we can, and that's what we try to do. We hope that we encounter, you know, workflow issues or user experience issues or something before, you know, somebody that signs up for Sessionwire does, so that we can fix it. And with the goal being that it's just a really easy to use, reliable product that just, it kind of fades into the background like a good telephone.
Yeah.
You know, you don't come home and go, well, I'm dating myself here, but back in the day when we had the dial-up phones, yes, I remember those. You didn't come home and go, oh, I'm going to use the telephone. The telephone is so amazing. You know, you just phoned your friend and said, hey, you want to watch The Partridge Family?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
dating myself a little bit there, but.
No, but I mean, at least for me, that feeling, like, I connect with people every day on Sessionwire around the world, and I don't think that feeling will ever go away. That kind of like, holy crap, I'm talking to somebody in X country, and it's like they're right here, you know. And then you start playing music. I mean, you know, we'll get into how everything's set up, but we're streaming audio back and forth, Robin and I, through Sessionwire as we speak, and you can play live. We say live in quotations. We don't say real time because of physics. We can get into that later as well. But you can stream, you know, your performance live to the other person and get real time feedback and write music quickly or do mix reviews quickly or whatever you want with Sessionwire. It's just it never gets old.
It is what I hoped I would find back in the day when this all started. It all started when I was 2. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's go. Let's get into it. The backstory.
No, we lived in a remote location. It's not that remote. It's not like we're in the middle of the woods or anything, but we're about 40-minute ferry ride from Vancouver, BC, and a fairly small community. And we're a musical family. My wife writes amazing songs and plays music and sings wonderfully, and our kids are both into music. And one of our kids, Christopher, was really going crazy with the whole music writing thing, and he was working on his MacBook. Well, actually, it was my MacBook. Full disclosure, but he was working away night and day in his room, and I just kept on seeing him, and I thought I just wished that he could connect with other people. Because we're all guilty of this, I think. Okay, maybe there's one of you out there in the audience that's one of those people that we all hate, that does everything perfectly, and you know, we'll just leave that alone for now. But we'll find you. Anyway, most of us do we have a core set of skills that we're really, really good at, that we work to master over our lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a bunch of stuff that we can do and we can get away with it, and there's stuff that we can do that we probably really shouldn't do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So here he was working away, he was trying to do everything. And that's the sort of model with the computer, with the MacBook Pro Studio or the Windows Laptop Studio, is it gives you all of these tools, and they kind of give you this feeling like you should be able to do everything. You should be able to arrange strings. You should be able to do drum tracks. You should be able to do, you know, bass parts and stuff like that. But the reality is there's nothing like having a room full of people that are all really, really good at what they do. And when you hear it, it makes your hair stand on end. I remember one example of that is I had a song, and I had this amazing, I thought it was an amazing plug-in, instrument plug-in for B3 organ. And I had this B3 part, and I played it, and I thought, oh man, that sounds amazing. Sounds just like a B3. Well, this was back when I was working at a studio called the Phoenix downtown, and I was actually teaching audio production there. And Kevin, Sessionwire co-founder, was teaching there with me. And he happened to have his B3 in the studio, and he had the Leslie cabinet, you know, the rotary cabinet, for the Hammond B3 organ set up. And I said, Kevin, can you play this track for me? And he's like, sure. So I played it, and in one take, pardon me, one take he blew up this B3 part, and I've never been the same. Because when you hear a Leslie cabinet mic'd up, coming from a Hammond, which is like this breathing, wheezing, it's almost like an alive beast. It's incredible. The difference is beyond night and day.
Yeah.
So those types of experiences have really shaped the way I look at music production. And I've seen okay a lot.
Right.
And Steve, and people like Steve that have been in the industry, they know what I'm talking about when somebody walks in the room and they just add the magic to the track and it just goes to a whole other place.
Yes.
So finding the right person for the job is challenging. And so anyway, back to, our remote town that we were living in. I saw Christopher and I thought, there's got to be something on the internet that he can use to connect with other people. Pardon my frog in my throat here. There's got to be something that he can use to connect with other people and get that live in the moment thing going on, the bottling of magic.
Right.
And at the time, I think he was into some sort of Norwegian operatic metal, some crazy stuff. I thought, man, if he could connect with some drummer in Norway that was, the right guy for the part, that would be amazing. He could find somebody else to help mix, which is a whole other skill set.
Right.
And so I looked and I looked and I looked and I found a lot of collaboration software where it's like you upload a picture and a bio and here's a little clip of my stuff and you could text back and forth and maybe even swap files back and forth, but it wasn't really at all what I was looking for. So I was tracing technology and I was working in internet related fields. I was doing e-commerce development. At that time I'd just taken a step away from teaching audio and game audio in post-secondary education, and I was doing some e-commerce work. And so I saw a lot of emerging technologies. I thought we can harness this and we can actually do this somehow. So I didn't know what exactly I was going to do, but this right here, we were in our house in Gibsons. I think we were at the dinner table or something, and Sessionwire popped out its head and we were just like, that's it, Sessionwire. So this logo, I just created this logo, and it just kind of went from there. And one thing led to another. But one of the most pivotal moments, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but one of our very first investors, Ron, I won't share his last name, privacy concerns or whatever, but Ron, we love you if you're out there. I was out blowing leaves off the lawn, or off the driveway, sorry. And he came out and I shut off the leaf blower and we had a conversation and I told him about what was going on with Sessionwire. And he left and I went back to blowing the leaves off the driveway and he came back to the door and he said, I'd like to invest in the company. And he was our very first investor. I still got the check framed over there on the wall. And it blew my mind and I was like, whoa. And then Kevin came on board as a partner, and then Rick Beaton came on board as another partner, and it just kind of went from there, and it grew, and it's been a crazy ride, I gotta tell you. But everybody that's involved in the project really, really loves the project. And we're all about musicians all the time, and we can honestly say that we're not out to build a chrome and glass tower somewhere and have board meetings and get our stock price up and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we want to run a really, really good company that becomes very, very valuable over time, but because of the value it creates.
Yeah.
The value it creates for people, for musicians, for mixers and recording engineers and songwriters and all those musical stakeholders out there in the world that really need a tool like this.
Yeah.
You can use Zoom to do video chatting, sure. You can use Zoom and you can sort of hack it to teach music lessons and that type of thing. But this is really the only tool I'm aware of that is so finely tuned and will be in the future even more finely tuned for doing this job specifically.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to note too that it's a misconception a lot of the times. I'm being the user facing person on the Sessionwire team, a lot of the times some of the blowback we get is, you software developers aren't developing for us musicians, and that's not the case at all. We are, every single one of us on the Sessionwire team, we are musicians. You play guitar and are a really phenomenal guitar player. Colin, our CEO, played piano and keyboards for Randy Bachman for a number of years. Kevin, a phenomenal keyboard player, has a studio in his house, co-founded a reputable audio/post school in the Vancouver area. Ross is an incredible composer in electronic music. I play the drums for a living. I tour with artists and do sessions. I mean, we are all neck deep in music all the time. And this, Sessionwire journey that you've been on, it's very clear that it's been, directed by the feedback of musicians and creatives and things like that. And it shows.
We started out with our collective knowledge, which is, there's some collective knowledge in the company.
We're going to get into that too, because there's some really interesting, radar, for example. We have to get into that because
for sure. I wonder, I should have told Barry about this, but that's a little dicey. But anyway, hey Barry, if you're out there, I love you, but I know he'd ask me questions that were really awkward and that kind of thing. But
right.
Anyway, the whole the team drew on all of our experience, at collective experience, and said, well, what would we want? What do we want? And as a matter of fact, that's really been the driving factor for the development of the product, is what do we want? What does Brendan want to track drums remotely? Why do I want to work with people and write songs and produce music at a distance? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of things came out of that. Like, number one, it needs to be agnostic in terms of the software that it connects.
Yes.
I did not want to get into a scenario where only this works with this software and that software. I know there's other tools out there. A lot of people bring up, Steinberg's been doing this for years, and well, we've been doing it for years as well, but they have a lot more money than we do, and they got bought by Yamaha, so there's that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love Steinberg stuff. I actually have Cubase on this computer. I've used Nuendo a lot. Love using Nuendo. But the thing about it is, we wanted a tool that was a community builder that would actually connect people so they could use the tools that they know and love. It's like, the analogy for me was, I don't want to go to a gig and someone goes, here, play this guitar. I'm like, but that's not my guitar. Mm-hmm. You must play this guitar for this gig because that's the way that it is. It's like, no, I got my own guitars. I'm going to play my own guitars. And it's the same with recording software.
Yep.
Some of you out there could probably say amen to that. Some people have a main DAW that they use all the time, and they've memorized the key commands. They just have a flow with it. It's like it's their axe. It's a tool that they use, they're comfortable with. Did not want to take that away. The other thing was, we wanted to not create jamming software. Mm-hmm. And because I don't need to even say this probably, but if anybody wants to have a debate on the speed of light and its negative effect on jamming, and the radius that it becomes practical in, I mean, it's just, you get beyond a 500-mile radius and forget about it unless you got a really big bottle of tequila.
So let's pause for a second, because I do want to touch on that for anybody watching this in the future. I've, again, being the user-facing support for the company, I get that question a lot. Can I use this for real-time jamming or rehearsing? The short answer is not realistically, if you're a really good musician, or you have really good ears, because the amount of delay that the human can hear before it becomes distracting is below 20 milliseconds or so, let's say, and then it becomes an audible slap delay. The speed of light thing, that actually came up in a conversation the other day with some users, where they were saying that, well, the speed of light, I mean, it only takes a millisecond for it to get from Vancouver to Toronto. That may be true, the speed of light directly.
That's not true, but anyway.
Well, it's not true. It's very low milliseconds. Like, it's very inaudible, let's say, if that light source was a laser pointed from Vancouver to Toronto. That's not the case with the internet.
No, and the real problem lies on the fact that you're talking about two locations,
Yeah.
and you're talking about there and back again, just like Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah.
That's
There,
one of my analogies.
there. Yeah. J.R. Tolkien will take our royalties.
Yeah, but the thing is, okay, so I do clap, you hear clap and respond to clap, which comes back to me, and I hear your response to my clap. It's twice whatever distance apart you are in terms of
Yeah.
latency right there. And
Yes.
it's not just the speed of light, it's also the computer, it's also the obviously the internet.
That's
And
exactly it. And that's what
the switches, yeah.
that's what a lot of people overlook is that yes, maybe light, and I can't off the top of my head, I don't know how long it takes to get from Vancouver to Toronto, but let's say 5 milliseconds. Yes, it may take 5 milliseconds for it to get to Vancouver to Toronto and then back to Vancouver, which is a total of 10 milliseconds, but that does not take into account the encoding and decoding of information, the switches in the network, the fact that signals travel through copper or whatever the material may be, it travels slower than the speed of light to begin with. There are all kinds of factors that
Yeah, and you can
pile
go
up.
on. There's some startups that offer live jamming and stuff, and you read through their documentation, and they'll all tell you roughly the same thing. 500-mile radius, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And you can play and be roughly in time and have some fun. So that's all right. That's kind of cool. But that's not what we want to do. We want to connect the entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't build a company based on a variable factor like that and hope to have success. So what's the answer to that? The answer is that the answer to that is to say, so what about latency? Like,
Yeah.
let's work with it. And I always go back to the shifts that have happened in modern recording, and I won't go way too far back, but let's go back to the single microphone. Okay, one mic recording, it's kind of making a bit of a renaissance. There's some people out there that are doing one mic recording and just putting everybody in the room, one mic, no excuses.
And it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. It's an amazing way to record. And the air is the best mixer. You hear that all the time, with a choir or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The volume of the room, it can be very magical. So that's the way back in the day that records were made. Sun recording and all that. People would stand around a microphone and they'd make a record by performing it live. They'd capture it, and that would be the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So along comes in the 60s comes the multi-track revolution, and Sgt. Pepper's, of course, was the one that really took that one to the moon. I mean, Les Paul had been doing multi-track for some time, but that was sort of in the middle of the 60s was where things transitioned really from the whole let's get it in one take one microphone generation. I know there was a transition, it wasn't all at once, but
Mm-hmm.
in the 60s and into the 70s, it just became the way that you did it, to have one person in the control room and everybody else was on the other side of the glass in the recording studio proper.
Yeah.
And there was this separation that happened, and then it got worse because first people were using gobos or go-betweens, to isolate and all that kind of stuff, and they still do that, of course, to this day. But then came the day when it's like, well, that guitar player is really loud. I know there's a closet down the hallway. So they stuffed the guy in the closet.
Yeah.
And put headphones on him, and he's sitting there, in this closet, and that for live off the floor stuff, were in extreme situations, that kind of thing started happening, where it started to become more of a disconnected process, and then then it sort of morphed into this thing where it was just overdub city.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You grab the bed tracks, and then it's like, oh, we'll get so and so in to do his guitar, we'll get so and so in to do this, we'll replace this, we'll replace that. And so then it became more of a manufacturing process. And I'm not casting shade on this, by the way. Many good records have been made this way. And then of course we hit the DAW. We hit Pro Tools. We hit large studios struggling for income because the business changed, and people make a good sounding record in their basement on a Pro Tools rig, and the economy just really shifted under the music business. So all of these things have taken the way music is made and transformed them in some fundamental way. So with
Yeah.
remote recording, what Sessionwire does, we are on the cusp of another paradigm shift like this, where there's a fundamental transformation about how music is going to be made in the future by a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of benefits for doing it the remote way. Number one is geography.
Yes.
You can find the best person for the part no matter where they live on the planet, as long as they have a decent internet connection.
Yep.
Whereas before, you had centers like Los Angeles, Nashville, and London, New York, all these large major centers. It's like if you wanted to be a studio musician, you went to LA, or you went to
Yeah.
Nashville, or you went to New York, or whatever, because anything else wasn't going to cut it. Vancouver never really had. I mean, I was a studio musician in Vancouver for a while, but it was nothing like what you experience in Los Angeles or somewhere like that.
And even these days in Los Angeles and Nashville and everything, there's, especially with COVID, speaking of paradigm shifts, a lot of musicians have home studios now that pretty closely rival some of the big rooms that used to be in existence. So you don't have to book a studio to record amazing drum tracks. You know, J.R. Robinson, in an example, we put this video out, JR tracking at home, and it sounds like JR playing in an A-class studio.
It's amazing, and you're totally right. It changes. You can get the person that you want regardless of geography. Check. So that's a really powerful part of the equation. But the other part of the equation is you can get someone that has an incredible resume.
Yeah.
You know, they've got, you know, a discography that just blow your mind, and because of the economy of scale, because someone like JR can be in one location and have his drums set up and tuned and mic'd and all that sort of stuff, the amount of work he has to do to play drums drops exponentially.
Yeah.
And so if he wanted to work with many more clients, he could do that, and he could do it at a lower rate if he chose to do that.
Yeah.
I'll leave that up to him to figure out his business model. But
Yeah.
the point being, it changes the economy of scale. So if before I charged, you know, a couple $1,000 to do a tune, now maybe I charge a couple $100 because I can do 10 in a day without breaking a sweat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, and I'm not saying that that's the math, by the way, but whatever the market bears and all that sort of stuff, but it does change the economic formula of the whole thing, which is kind of another point of Sessionwire. Is to
Absolutely.
make and so here's the other thing, because you can get who you need and you can get it at a better price, now you can put together a recording that has the best possible outcome, and it's going to increase the quality of music that is created.
Yes.
For a couple reasons. One, you have real people playing together, maybe not jamming together like live, but you're still working together, you're evaluating together, you're in the moment together, and that happens with Sessionwire. I can absolutely guarantee you that. We might not be able to play, like, you know, 64th notes in perfect sync together, or in my case, whole notes. But,
Not true.
We can still do some serious work, creative work, and we can get this, you know, this spidey tingly sensation, and you get the happy accidents where somebody plays the wrong part and it sends a creative project in a totally different direction. And
Yeah.
it's amazing. So we can do that. So when you had the human connection, you had the economy of scale, you had the geographic reach. This is a boon for studio owners as well, because we initially had some studio owners come at us pretty hard, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to wreck everything," and we're like, "No, do what you're good at. What do you have? You've got this amazing acoustic space. I don't have an amazing acoustic space.
Yeah.
But my neighbor's pressure washing right now on the other side of the house, thank goodness. But I don't have sound isolation. I don't have, you know, a room that's not affected by badly by modes and stuff like that, or you know, sound coloration. I have probably lots of outboard gear that other people can't afford.
Yeah.
And there's new and exciting ways that you can use your studio and have a global audience instead of just the people that are within the city limits of where you're working.
Exactly. I mean, and I just kind of to interject there, I just want to touch briefly on the workflows that we promote with Sessionwire that make all of this possible to circumvent latency and everything like that. And essentially what we're using Sessionwire to do is to monitor what's happening on the remote side of the connection so that the recording is always being done on the performing side of the connection. So you would send a 2 mix of whatever you want to X musician. I keep throwing JR's name out here. You want JR to play drums on your song. You send him a 2 mix of your song without drums. He puts it in his session, and you get to listen and watch and give real-time feedback while he tracks your song in his studio. And like Robin was saying, if there's a moment in that recording process that, if JR had been tracking drums by himself, he may have gone, ooh, that idea I don't like that for some reason. However, if you're watching on Sessionwire and listening in real time and you hear that and that's exactly what you want, or it takes in a different direction, that's what this is all about, is allowing you that kind of fly on the wall perspective of somebody creating your music, or adding to your music remotely. And that workflow circumvents latency because JR has the 2 mix on his end. You're listening to him play along with it in time, coming to you on your side of the connection, which is...
And that's exactly what we're talking about just accepting that latency exists.
Yeah.
And working with it rather than trying to fight against it all the time. So it doesn't have to be a negative thing like, what about your latency? What about your latency?
And let's just be clear, Sessionwire is an application for professional musicians. It's a professional piece of software. It's not like any of the other software that promotes real-time jamming or rehearsing. The quality of the audio and video that is transmitted by Sessionwire far surpasses those applications because they have to keep the bit rate and the quality of the audio and video very low in order for it to be real time or live, which in many cases is not real time or live enough to feel musical.
Well, I remember sitting, we went to the NAMM show, Summer NAMM in Nashville, and I was sitting having some nachos and beer in this pub, and we were talking to actually there's a few people of note there. I won't mention their names, so I'm never comfortable dropping names, but this one fellow was a bass player, a world famous bass player, and he was talking about how he hated the reigning professional digital audio workstation of the day, which is still kind of reigning today. It was much worse back then, but he was talking about the latency. He was talking about the latency of the converters.
Yeah.
And how it messed with the pocket when he's playing bass.
Yeah.
So you're talking to guys like that, and then you say, oh, well, 20 milliseconds here. And it's like, no. How much latency do you really want for recording? And the answer is 0.
Yeah.
No latency.
Yeah.
So you can't even get that at the location where you're recording with your computer. You can't even get 0 latency at that point.
Exactly.
Low now, like much lower. And of course, Universal Audio has done great work with putting their plugins right on the interface so that they run at super low latency and all that sort of stuff. So there's this drive to 0 that nobody will ever get to because it's not possible.
Case in point. I mean, sorry to interject again, but case in point here, we're going to try something adventurous with this this live stream here. I have Studio One up and running, and I have a VST instrument loaded, and I can play it, in real time. But if we take a look at, let's see if I can do this here, main monitor. Sure, let's see what happens if I hit that button. That looks right. So if I pull up
You're one of those technical guys, aren't you?
Yeah, I try to be. So if I pull up the preferences in Studio One, I am running Keyscape, which is a fairly CPU-intensive software instrument for playing piano or bass or whatever. Or in this case, Keyscape would be any keyboard instrument, but it's essentially Omnisphere by Spectrasonics, and it's a really intensive CPU hogging kind of application. If I set my buffer size to 128 samples, which is the lowest that I can go without the sample rate or the sound breaking up because of how CPU intensive it is. I'm still getting 4.5 milliseconds of delay on my local system before it ends up going out anywhere else. And that's, it's hardly noticeable to me, but any more than that, and it would become very noticeable very quickly. Or back to the Sessionwire window.
Yeah, well, it's like you're getting into the realm of playing a jazz solo on a sousaphone.
Yeah.
Where you have to start blowing into the thing for about a minute before you get to the note.
Yeah, right.
I actually saw a guy in New Orleans play a jazz solo on a sousaphone, and it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, those cats in New Orleans are on another level, though. I mean, that's like the birthplace of jazz.
But talk about anticipating a note.
Yes, seriously. Before we go any further, there are some questions that we should address here and some comments and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
Sean, mentions, imagine being at a show, forgetting your backing tracks, and then using Sessionwire to run your backing tracks to front of house to play your set using Sessionwire. We're not there yet, but it is possible, but I wouldn't bank a show on remotely running your backing tracks. Cindy had some really great things to say. She says, Robin, what an ingenious discovery. We thank you. And Cindy's a sweetheart. She's an incredible singer, has worked with Bootsy Collins and a laundry list of people. Byron Wagner posted a link to how they did remote recording 28 years ago, pre-internet. If anybody wants to check it out with Graham Nash.
I'd love to check it out.
So that's in the comments. We had a question from Pierre. Let me get to this here really quick. Pierre teaches a lot using Zoom. What would he gain with Sessionwire?
Shall you or shall I? Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing about Zoom is it's an amazing tool, and I seems like I spend half my life on it with other people these days in meetings. But Sessionwire is specifically designed for high quality audio as a separate stream from the talkback. So Zoom, you can think of Zoom as having the talkback part nailed down, voiced and video. Sessionwire is a completely separate system for treating the audio, and so that gives you a lot of flexibility on how you route the audio, how you interact with the student, the ability to quickly share files, whether they be music files or scores or whatever, PDF files. So it's a much more, I'm going to use the word intimate here, but don't get me wrong.
No, I agree. Yeah.
It's not Sessionwire is not a general purpose tool designed for video conferencing. It's a tool that's designed for people to have a musical conversation. And I use that phrase a lot because it really nails it for me, in that you're communicating with your voice, with your gestures, with your your body language, and even you're even communicating with emojis now.
I want to see if that showed up on the thread here. I think it did.
Yeah. Anyway,
Amazing.
The bottom line is there's all this communication happening, and most tools are designed to allow that communication to happen. But when it comes to the audio, it's kind of like second-rate citizen. There are things you can do to improve the audio quality in Zoom, but to be able to have the flexibility of what you can do in Sessionwire is just not on the table, and that's not what they're trying to do. That's not the aim of. So, to use another weird analogy, Sessionwire is kind of like Airbnb versus Craigslist.
Yeah.
Zoom would be Craigslist. It's more general purpose, and you can get a bed and breakfast on Craigslist, but I would never want to do that. But so Sessionwire is a purpose-built product for musical applications, and one of those applications is, of course, teaching. So that's my answer to that question.
I think that's a great answer. A follow-up question from Pierre is, could we play duets? And we answered that previously. No, in real time, you could not. That would just not be musically satisfying. But what you could do is send your student a 2-mix of the duet, so your part, send it to them, have them drop it into something like GarageBand or a free DAW that's easy to use, and have them play along with it while you listen to them play along with it. And that's, in a teaching context, as far as remote teaching goes, that's the best case scenario, because I've done it many times. I've taught drums online, and playing a groove and having a student follow along with it. It sounds fine to them, but to me, holy smokes, trying to keep a steady tempo and listen to what they're doing while it's coming in half a second or more behind what I'm doing. This is using Zoom as well. Latency is big with Zoom.
You do bring up an interesting point, though. In one direction, for instance, if I wanted to play something along to what you were playing, and you were playing along to a track at your end, for instance, you could be playing against the track and transmitting it to me. I could be hearing it, and I could be playing my own part live in real time. You wouldn't be able to hear it, though, but I would.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is a valuable thing. So if you're playing to the track and you're doing some, cool spaced out thing, I can vibe on that right in the moment, and I can be recording to your live performance. And the only downside to that is you can't close the loop. You can't hear what I'm playing and respond to what I'm playing, but it still gets you half the way there, which is in and of itself, I think, a very valuable thing to point out to people. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
we get a lot of questions. There's a teaser video for Sessionwire 2.0 out there that's showing myself playing drums and Ross playing guitar. And that video makes it seem like, we're jamming with each other. In actual fact, we are playing together. We're playing at the same time. I'm playing to a click track, and that is being broadcast to Ross, who's playing guitar along with it and recording it in real time along with my drums. But I have his guitar part muted, because if I was to listen to his guitar part, it would be X amount of milliseconds behind where I'm playing and completely distracting. So in that video, we are playing together, but Ross is playing to me and I'm playing to a click. That's exactly, you can't close that loop. I could not bring Ross's guitar back to me to listen to it in real time or live, because it's just not physically possible. I think that's, Pierre says, great answer, thanks. So we can forge ahead. Cool, Kim, how's it going? He asks, are you screen sharing or going through Streamlabs OBS? This is more of a question regarding how we're doing the live stream, and I'm planning on doing a video on it soon and posting that. I am using Streamlabs OBS to broadcast to 3 different locations, and I have an interesting kind of routing setup that I'll do a video on and explain sometime in the next couple days. I actually hope tomorrow. It's an anonymous viewer. When do you guys sleep? He's asking us. Rarely.
Well, actually, I'm a bit of a napper. Be honest. I burn hot, and then I gotta crash for 15 minutes, and then I get up and do it all over again. But I do find that is very helpful for me. So. Yeah,
I try to get my 8 hours, and then if I need a short nap during the day, I'll do it as well. But being that we're such a small team, pardon me, my voice is starting to dry out after this much talking in a row. Being that we're such a small team, we're all on all the time. I mean, there's not much downtime, in all seriousness, on the Sessionwire team. I deal with people around the world 24/7. Robin is developing the app 24/7. Our lead developer, John, is also developing the app 24/7. Our CEO and our COO, they're building relationships with people 24/7. Ross, building business deals 24/7. We're just working all the time.
Yeah, working hard, and I'll just jump in and say, being the guy that sort of lit the match at the very, very beginning. I'm incredibly proud of this team, and I'm incredibly proud of what we built with the resources that we've had to build it. And I just hope that everybody can really appreciate that when they use the product, and it helps them get to where they need to be, because there is a team that is so passionate about this product. It's almost like I can't, some days at the end of the day, I just think about everybody on the team, and I just go, I can't believe how blessed I am as a person to be able to work with this team of people that are not only, showing up and doing their job, but they're like going so above and beyond what people would normally expect to make sure that this is a success. And why? It's because we believe that the world needs it. We honestly do.
Yeah.
I think that this is a really necessary part of the rebirth of the recording and professional audio industry, because some of those things that we talked about earlier about economy of scale and getting the right person and increasing the quality of music, I mean, we got some work to do there. Listen to what's going on. I don't want to. I don't want to get too far down the streaming rabbit hole, but there was that article I read a couple of days ago where I think 60 or 70% of the music being streamed is considered classic music.
Yeah.
And the reason is that people are going back and they're, who's this David Bowie guy? And they're clicking on it, and all of a sudden they hear a David Bowie song, and they go down the rabbit hole, and then there's this whole, to them it's new, to the newest generation, that's new music.
Yep.
A lot of that stuff that they haven't heard. It's not like when we were coming up and classic rock was on the radio all the time, and they're like, oh my gosh, can I really hear Born to Be Wild one more time without smashing my head into the wall?
Yeah.
I mean, it was very repetitive and whatever, but what we're talking about is quite different. Somebody gets into streaming, they have the entire catalog of the last however many decades of music sitting there before them.
Yeah.
And so the new music has to compete with every song ever written that's in that catalog. So it's sort of
Yeah.
a different thing. So that's one item that I feel Sessionwire can help with. The new music that comes out is, there's some stuff that's heavily promoted, and I'm really not going to mention any names here because this is a sensitive thing to say, but I have talked to people in the industry. They say, if you give me X amount of promotion budget, I can put a platinum record on my wall. And it doesn't matter what it sounds like.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right? So if that's the kind of thing that's going on in the public, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all new music is like that by any stretch of the imagination, because I know that there's stuff that's every bit as good or even better than what's gone before out there. It's
Agreed.
just not being discovered.
Yeah. Agreed.
So it's kind of a grassroots movement that I see as being the salvation of the music industry, in a sense, because if people start working together and finding the right people at the right price at the right time and start creating stuff that is undeniably amazing,
Yeah.
that's going to change everything.
So on that note, speaking of things coming, I want to touch on, oh, wait a second, man, I'm going to get too technical about having a video stream. Doesn't affect, okay. Yeah, so some questions that are related to that, some features coming and things like that. At the moment, our online platform is kind of in its rudimentary stages. It's in a foundational stage where you can search for users and seek out people who are into certain genres or instruments or things like that. But we are kind of on the brink of expanding or exploding that community aspect of Sessionwire, where you can go out and find whoever you want and send them a message through Sessionwire without leaving the Sessionwire ecosystem. You can go from discovering the person you want to work with to sending them a message and agreeing on terms for your session, to connecting with them on Sessionwire, recording your music, and then also I'm not sure if we can talk about some of the other stuff coming after that point. No.
We better keep we have so many things that are on in the funnel for future features and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that's like so cool. It almost makes me explode sitting here not being able to talk about it really. But there's some really great stuff coming. But what you just said, in and of itself, if that's where the product stopped, that would still be amazing. And
Yeah.
we've got some work to do there. We understand that on the community side, where we want to really develop, and we want to take the same attitude that we took with the recording software with the communities. This is sort of an emerging part of our modus operandi. We'd like to work with other existing communities, not try and just be, oh, we're creating a Sessionwire community in a vacuum and you have to join our team or go away.
Yeah.
We would rather embrace other communities and say, hey, we would like to feature members of your community in our Discover search engine and have a little badge that identifies them with your community and help those community members connect with community members of another, organization or whatever.
Yeah.
So again, to the goal being find the right person, regardless of their community, regardless of where they live in the world, and just make the magic happen that way. So that's sort of where we're headed with that. And you also mentioned sending messages and whatnot. So the next release that we're doing is there's going to be a lot of stuff about quality of service of the internet, because we need to just clearly distinguish what is Sessionwire's burden to bear and what is not. And the internet, we can't do anything about the internet. I wish, we were like as rich as Elon or something and maybe buy our own internet and do that, but we can't do that.
Yeah.
So we are, in some senses, at the mercy of the internet, but we are building diagnostic tools to help make that more obvious. So there's a problem with your internet. Oh, okay, now you know what to fix. You don't have to phone up Brendan and say, Sessionwire doesn't work. It's like, yes, it actually does work, but let's look at the following factors. And you're using Wi-Fi and you're about 400 yards away from your modem, and it's going through your car. Why? So that's the next release. The release after that is where we're going to be doing a lot of work with the group communications aspect of Sessionwire, which includes Session View. So if those of you that are on the call or on the live stream right now may or may not know about Session View, but Session View, you can send a link to somebody, they can click on it and join from a browser. They don't need to have the Sessionwire app. They don't even need to be a Sessionwire member to become a part of your session as a video chat person, and also to be able to listen to the high quality audio. So
related to that, sorry to interject, John Robert Hemingway had a question about that. 3 people in a songwriting session, if 2 are talking over each other, can the third person hear everything said? Yes, they can, and they can also see and be seen by everybody else in the call. We'll get back to that, but continue the group chat.
Yeah, so
expansion,
the other part is the text chat.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be adding text chat, which is channelized, so you can have chats with individual people in your connections list, and even groups of people within your connections list. And we're also going to make it so that those chats are persistent, at least for some period of time, maybe forever. I don't know. Depends how full our servers get, but the goal is so that you'll have the ability to connect offline using Sessionwire and say, hey, Brendan, can we meet at 3 o'clock and do a session? And Brendan checks on Sessionwire like 15 minutes later and goes, yeah, sure, 3 o'clock works for me. Just like we do now with Slack. Mostly we're using Slack alongside of Sessionwire. So if you take what we're doing on Slack, get rid of all of the stuff that we don't use, which is a lot. There's a lot of features that we don't use.
Yeah, but let's think like Facebook Messenger or something, or WhatsApp.
Yeah, exactly. So people can, they can organize their sessions, they can communicate, they can have a record of their communication, and they can set up live stuff. So that's another way where there might be a little bit of reticence to find somebody in Sessionwire Discover and then just send them a connection request. And you've never met them before, you don't know anything about them, they don't know anything about you. It might be a better foray into a musical relationship to say, hey, saw you on the Discover thing, I live in Vancouver, I really like playing, this kind of music, and I listened to your tracks on your public profile, and I think you might be a really good fit for this track.
There you go.
Then you get into this, back and forth, and then you say, okay, well, why don't we connect and have a chat about it on Sessionwire? Then everybody's feeling, pretty comfortable about that, and then you can take it from there. So I think that's a really important part of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I other features coming down the road, obviously having the ability to schedule sessions and, build it's similar to any kind of video conferencing software. You want to set up a session for X day, it's there. You just have to click in, little things like that without getting into too much detail and kind of what's coming down the pike. That's in a future update.
Not too far away.
Not too far away, but we've got some stuff to do.
We have so many features.
Oh my God. It's Sean DeLong says multi-track recording and what would have to be done to achieve this remotely. And essentially, it's pretty much exactly how you use Sessionwire right now, but there'll be multi-channels. There's nothing too different.
We do have some sleight of hand that we're going to be bringing into the product at some point in the future that will actually help promote the idea that we've solved the speed of light problem. Although it will be a bit of an illusion, and I can't really go into detail on it, but that also ties in with having multiple audio channels beyond the current stereo bidirectional channel, and that's certainly something I will talk about in public, is that and everybody I'm sure probably knows that a company like ours needs to move into that multi-channel part of the market because, well, Atmos, sort of the elephant in the room after Apple got all spatial on their AirPods and stuff like that, and now everybody wants to get into the Atmos mixing game, and so it would be very helpful for the pro audio community, especially, to be able to stream multiple channels of audio. So that's definitely something that's on the roadmap.
Chris Nunn, quote, hopefully a way to receive payments or pay for sessions within the ecosystem, end quote. Moving on. Let me see here. Edmund Red says, not wanting to get too technical, but having a video stream doesn't affect latency? Question mark.
No.
Not really. No.
It doesn't affect latency at all, because video is a completely separate stream from the audio.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that there's a lot of confusion about with people that are using the product early on is they talk about, oh, I've got bandwidth. Everybody's proud of their bandwidth.
Yeah. You can have a gigabyte per second internet connection, and it doesn't matter.
Sessionwire is very, very economical with bandwidth. That's the amount of information that can be transferred over time, measured in megabits per second, or megabytes. People get those mixed up, but megabits a second is the standard measurement for that. So without getting too technical about it, we did the NAMM show in Anaheim with a Sessionwire booth in Anaheim, and Kevin was at his studio up here in Vancouver, and he was on Sessionwire 9 hours a day for the entire show, and we only had a 3 megabit a second up and down connection, and so you don't need much bandwidth. What you really need is throughput. Yep. And with Wi-Fi, unfortunately, Wi-Fi tends to be quite bursty. I looked for another word. I can't find it.
That's the perfect word for it.
Put it in the dictionary, bursty.
Yeah, bursty.
So you get a ton of information from your Wi-Fi, and then you get nothing. And then you get a bunch more, and you get nothing. And I've even talked to some of the guys that have installed internet in our home, and they don't understand the difference. They go, well, your speed test says you're getting this kind of throughput. And I said, yeah, well, let's look at actually what's coming from the Wi-Fi router, and it looks like the Grand Canyon. So the short answer is, if you can not use Wi-Fi, don't. Yeah.
Well, and that goes with any professional audio software. I love your analogy of like a Neumann U67 from the 70s with a wireless plug in it going to a Shure receiver. Are you going to do that with a $25,000 microphone? No, you're going to use a cable, and it's going to be a really good cable, and it's going to go directly into a really good preamp, and that's going to get your signal. It's the same with internet. You want a really robust internet connection over Ethernet to a really robust router. You want stability of that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's like, don't spend $3,500 on a microphone and then work remotely with people and have the Wi-Fi router that your internet service provider put in, because it's likely a piece of junk. But even if you get like a really fancy gaming router, that can help a lot, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You can get these really high-end, high-performance routers for gaming, but it's still not as good as a cable, which you can get for $15.
Yeah, 60 feet of it for $15, and
yeah, just plug it right in, and you'll be immediately immune from all the interference that you get from microwave ovens and from It's amazing what people have between their wireless antenna and their computer, and they don't really think about the fact that these electromagnetic waves are subject to reflection and blocking and absorption and all kinds of things, just like sound.
Yep.
It's never a good idea to trust your audio to something like that, unless you absolutely have to. And then you want to get on the game of fine-tuning your Wi-Fi as much as you can by making sure that you're on clear channels and all that sort of stuff. But that's a conversation.
Yeah, it's it may be unsightly and a little bit clunky, but if you can run a 200-foot Ethernet cable from your computer to your router, do it. It'll make a world of difference. World of difference.
Like, even in my experience here, we had the guy come over from TELUS, which is the internet service provider we have here, and he got down under the crawl space and was drilling holes and running wires, and I think it cost like $75 or something like that to run a wire. So, unless you're in a really weird situation where it's all like cement walls and weirdness like that, I think it's a really good investment to make, because the remote audio thing is here to stay.
Yep.
You have to say that with, everything that's within me, it's here to stay. Everybody I talk to say it's never going back to the way it was.
Well, for everybody watching as well, while we're doing this, we are in a Sessionwire call, and I am streaming live to Facebook and YouTube and blah, blah, blah. I'm using just under 1 megabyte per second upload, and just about 3/4 of a megabyte download. So really not that heavy of a load. So Sean says, would be great to see a partnership and integration with FilePass, HubSpot, and Zapier. I think that the whole purpose behind Sessionwire is to be an ecosystem that does what FilePass does and HubSpot and Zapier. I mean, I'm not sure if there are any clear integrations that we can do with those.
Well, we are going to be doing integrations with other software platforms and stuff, but mostly that's going to be single sign-on integration, at least at first, and sharing of profile information, of course, with the user's permission. But for instance, if you are in a community and we work with that community and we have a single sign-on, you can use your existing credentials from that community, sign in as a member of that community, and then there'd be an opportunity to say, hey, would you like to share your information with Sessionwire? We can pull that information into the Sessionwire profile, give it a badge, and say, hey, you're a member of this community, but now you're on Sessionwire. So we'd like Sessionwire to become a community of communities.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really cool idea, because then, everybody can play well with everybody else, and it's knocking down borders. It's erasing the boundaries between people so that they can connect and get down to what's really important, which is actually making music and having fun.
Yeah.
I see my guitars back there, and I'm like, I want to get this live stream and play my guitar.
Well, no, this is going, before we connected, the thing that we kind of discussed is I like live streams that are like real and not scripted, and I think this is perfect. It's responding. Yeah. But as long as it goes, we'll keep going. We're still getting comments here, so
yeah,
flip absolutely. Through.
I see someone says I got a 100-foot Cat 7 cable. Oh yeah.
Oh, nice echo on Robin's voice. Sounds like John Lennon. Is there an echo on Robin's voice? That might just be this. if I need to wear headphones. I think that I'm streaming this directly out, so it's probably picking your voice up. Lessons learned. Lessons learned.
I could do worse than sounding like John Lennon.
Yeah, very true. What are some of the advantages of having 2 dedicated audio signal paths?
Sorry, can you say that again? What are the advantages?
Advantages of having 2 dedicated audio signal paths. I think that differentiating between TalkBack and HQ is the biggest difference.
Okay, so let's have a go at that one, because that's a great question. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked. So TalkBack, there are a bunch of things that you want to do to the TalkBack signal so that the goal there is intelligibility, and obviously that you want a nice quality to the sound of the TalkBack and all that, but you need to have echo cancellation, because on any laptop computer you have a microphone and speakers that are both open at the same location. So you need to prevent feedback, you need to prevent delay from the audio spilling back into the microphone. So there's been a lot of scientific work around that, and it works really, really well these days. So our TalkBack has echo cancellation and various different DSP functions on it, which enable it to be a TalkBack stream, just like Zoom. They have the same kind of technology with their application. On the other hand, the high quality audio stream has no DSP whatsoever on it, and it's just as pure an audio stream as we can create and send across the internet, and it's sent at a very high bit rate, 400 kilobits a second, which is the highest AAC goes. Apple's AAC is 320. So it's very, very high quality. It's easily high quality enough to actually record a part with, although you don't have to, because like as Brendan alluded to earlier, you usually record at the remote location and monitor both the backing track and the recorded audio at the wherever the studio is, or the engineer or whatever. So the TalkBack is optimized for voice. High quality our high quality audio stream is optimized for music or any kind of professional audio. The other thing is we use some fancy footwork in the recording software to do auto mute.
Mm-hmm.
And auto mute is one of the killer features of Sessionwire that once people experience it, they go, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because whenever you hit play or record in your recording software, you can set it so that it auto mutes all of the TalkBack. So if you have people in Sessionview, for instance, say you have 3 people that have joined from a browser link, and then myself and Brendan, and Brendan hits play and auto mute is on, we're gone. Our TalkBack is gone. That's why we created some people might think it's silly, but we created this so that there's some means of nonverbal communication that's still available to people when auto mute is on. Because if you've got a guy that's he's doing a mix on a 20-minute piece of music, and he gets 30 seconds into it and he's grooving away and auto mute is on, and you're like, stop, you're running around waving your arms and stuff. So we wanted to have some way to communicate non-verbally because of auto mute. But auto mute is a really great feature. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but without having the 2 different audio streams, that wouldn't work.
Yep. Agreed. Where to start here? Will 2 producers ever have the ability to join in a mix of a song with Sessionwire? I think I kind of get the question. This is Stone International. Stone and I, we connect every couple of weeks, and it's great. Always great to hear from Stone. Ever have the ability to join in a mix of a song? At the moment, yes. I mean, it is impossible. It is possible. But what happens is, for example, you can see on my screen, if I point, I have to figure out which direction I'm pointing. I'm pointing right here. I'm the host of this call. So you would want me to initiate the call and have the mix session in my DAW and be making mix adjustments, and Robin can listen in to this mix, give me feedback on this mix. But we can also, with Session View, go to this little phone icon here. I'm just going to wait to see if this shows up in the Sessionwire broadcast window, because Let me see here. Sometimes it doesn't show the way that I want it to. Anybody see that? Anybody? Yes, it does. Excellent. So the little phone with the plus symbol, that is the session view link generator. So either Robin or myself could click that, create a URL, and send it to anybody in the world by email, by text, whatever, and they can drop in on what Robin and I are doing from a web browser, from Google Chrome, from Safari, without signing up for Sessionwire, without downloading and installing any any software. They can hear and see us talk to each other, and they can speak to us, and we can see them. But as host, they can hear my audio coming from my DAW as well. So I would broadcast the mix out to the Peanut Gallery in Session View and to Robin, get the feedback, make the adjustments, keep broadcasting, and so on. So I hope that that answers that question.
Well, you can. We also have a feature that it hasn't really gone super public yet, but it's the remote control partnership that we have with Splashtop. And so theoretically, I could have control over Brendan's computer as well as him.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we could both have access to the, the DAW, which could create some interesting friction. But
yeah. Well, that's related to a question from earlier. Let me see if I can find this. K.R. Moore says, a lot of my clients aren't very tech savvy, so right now I use Zoom to remote control the session on their end using the DAW of my choice. I would love to do this fully in Sessionwire. Is this feature coming soon? Yes. And in the actual fact, it is functional at this very moment, but in a development kind of stage. There are a few select users that we have given access to this remote feature, and it works like a charm, but very soon it will be built right into the Sessionwire app as an additional feature that you can add to your subscription.
Yeah, and the reasoning behind that, again, it flows from the philosophy of, the Sessionwire philosophy of helping people get the job done, helping musicians and audio professionals get the job done. And one thing that we've encountered along the way is there are many, many talented, creative people that are just not technical.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that they're not as smart as somebody else or anything like that. It just means they don't have an affinity for technical things. Sometimes they find it intimidating or just boring, or they don't want to waste their time with it, and they're incredibly talented. So the remote control thing is a way to get around that, where they can just enter a 9-digit code. The producer can enter a 9-digit code from the artist, take control of their computer, and literally run the whole recording session. Yeah,
just like it's on their own machine. They're using Sessionwire to monitor. And it just to tag onto that, I'm not going to mention any names, but I have the experience of helping set up one of the world's best metal bands. Like, for real, the cream of the crop. And none of the guys are technically savvy, and that's fine. They're really creative, and they know exactly how they want to make music. They just don't want to have anything to do with the technical side of things. So having that remote control ability is key for people like that specifically. I guess that's where we'll go from there. On a related note, with Session View, how many people will be able to join through Session View? That's a two-pronged question. So how many people are able to join right now, and how many people will be able to join in the future? I think if you want to address those two questions.
Sure. Session View isn't Zoom, and there's a difference, and I won't get into the technical details, and it's not a cop-out. It's just the way that Zoom is designed. Zoom takes all of the audio and video feeds from everybody that's connected and mixes them all together, like when you put some color in a can of paint and stir it up, and you get one video stream from Zoom that contains all of the video from everybody. So that means that your computer doesn't have to work very hard. You're just getting one video feed from Zoom, and it's pretty light lifting for your computer. So a Session View, that doesn't give us enough control over the participants that are in the Session View call. So we use another form, which is slightly different, where we receive a separate video stream from everybody that's connected on the call. Now that means that it's more work for your computer, and that means if you have an old somewhat sluggish computer, it might struggle
Mm-hmm.
if you have a lot of people on session view. Now, if you have a reasonably recent Mac or Windows machine, you should be able to easily have 5 or 6 people on a session view call without any problem whatsoever. And of course, the new Apple M1 and M1X and whatever, all those new chips are going to be able to do even more than that, because they can take these video streams and easily decode them on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no answer for exactly how many streams you can have in session view. It really depends. And again, it's not a cop out, it's just the way that it is. However, we do also have on the drawing board the potential of a feature to switch into a Zoom-like mode. It's actually the same mode that Zoom uses. It's called MCU, where in certain situations it might make sense for session view to use that mode, where you could have 50 people on for some teaching seminar or something like that.
Concerts,
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something that's on the roadmap, but right now we're really trying, as with everything else we've done with the development of Sessionwire, we're really trying to understand what you need as we go and develop the most important features first.
Yeah.
To make your job easier, to make music remotely, or produce audio remotely. So if all of a sudden, thousands of people were saying, hey, we need to have 50 or 100 people on a session view call, then we probably alter our trajectory a little bit and make that more of a priority. But right now it is on the roadmap, but it probably won't be here, I'm guessing for a little while anyway.
That is, unless we get enough demand for it. So if you want that feature, put it in the comments below, send us a feature request. The more demand we get for something, the higher up the feature list it gets bumped. So we are in my day-to-day kind of interactions with people, and with how the company functions in general, we are about our users. We want to make Sessionwire what the users need. So if you have feature requests, send them our way. If you want to see us do something in a certain way, send it our way. We'll put it on our roadmap. And the more demand we get for these things, that shuffles the order of priority. So I have two questions that popped up here. So the first one, actually the second one I'll leave because it's quite funny. I think it's interesting. But the first one is, can we go into how easy or how difficult it would be to add multiple audio channels to the application from a dev perspective? It's easy, yeah. But
we know exactly we know exactly what and how and when we're going to do that. It's just a matter of again, as Brendan pointed out, we're balancing multiple priorities, and certain people will obviously think that we're missing the boat because we don't have this that they need right now. But we have to balance that across a whole spectrum of users.
Yeah.
And many users that are on the spectrum. Little bit of anyway.
Yeah, great. Moving on.
Moving on from that. I count myself as one, but.
Oh yeah, no. But it's very true. I mean, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of users, and every one of them has needs and demands, and they want to use Sessionwire in a different way. And between how they want to use it and the hardware that they're using and the software that they're using, and there's an infinite number of combinations of ways that you can use Sessionwire and what people are looking for out of it, and we just have to balance it in a way that makes sense. And at the moment, the things at the top of the list are features that I think everybody will find handy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what we want. Like, I don't think there's anything that's on our immediate roadmap that people won't go, wow, great.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what, whether you're doing voiceovers or whether you're doing mix reviews or whatever, it's all going to be pretty broad brushstroke stuff to help elevate the product and make it easier to use and more performant and all those kinds of things. But often I get on a call and somebody will say, this would be the perfect thing if only it did, and then they'll have some little thing that's a quirk in their workflow, and to them it's like, it's got to have this thing, and
it's an edge case though. It's like way out there. Yeah,
way out there. And we're not in a position right now to do edge cases, and we don't ever want to become one of those companies. I'm not trying to throw shade on somebody like Microsoft or one of these bigger companies or Adobe, but they've had these applications that they've had for years and years and years and years and years, and they just keep adding features. And most of the features are features nobody wants.
Yeah.
But they have to do something for the next shareholder meeting or whatever.
Version 10.1.7.9 has
Yeah. So they can't just
X.
stop and say, well, we're done now. It's completely reliable. It's got all the features everybody needs. I almost wish they would do that and move on and do something completely different.
Create a different software suite. Yeah.
Yeah. So even Slack is getting that way right now. They keep adding these new features, and honestly, anybody that uses Slack, there's a certain core set of features that you use and you find incredibly valuable.
Yep.
But beyond that, it's like I don't have time to go to Slack University or whatever. I just want to use. I want the tool to do the job that I need, and I want it to do it reliably, and I really don't need much more than that. So
Awesome.
we don't want to get silly with the tool, but we do have many things that are on the platform, which is the community side. Somebody mentioned something about doing transactions and stuff like that. I'm not going to go there, but I'm kind of going to go there, just to say that there are a lot of things coming on the community platform that would be incredibly beneficial for the community in getting their job, getting
Yeah.
paid for what they do.
Let's just say that you won't need to leave the Sessionwire ecosystem at all ever, from initially contacting the person you want to work with to the finished product.
But that doesn't mean that we're trying to make it, a claustrophobic environment where
Nope.
it's all about Sessionwire all day long. We want to welcome in other communities and give access to various different services and that kind of thing. And in that sense, we want to make it an ecosystem that's very expansive and
We're just trying to make it easy. We're trying to make it painless for you to create what you want to create, so that you don't have to go and use X service to do this or that service to do that. It's all in one place, and it's easy to navigate, and from start to finish, you can do what you need to do without hang-ups, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So if you, in a thought experiment, sometimes I sit down in front of my computer and I imagine, okay, what do I want to do? I've got Logic open and I want to write a song or something like that. So, maybe I'll load up some software instruments, get my guitar and start noodling around. Or actually, Naomi, I know she's watching or has been watching, but she's got some crazy amazing songs that we want to get around to producing as soon as the smoke clears a little bit around here.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? Well, we've got the skeletons, some of these songs already down in terms of the arrangement and so on and so forth. So that I go, I know, let's hit up Brendan. We'll buy him a hamburger and we'll get him to play drums on this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you start thinking about connecting with who do you know and who would be good for this part and so on and so forth. And you start making those connections and then having the conversations and then getting into doing the actual sessions. And then all of a sudden it goes from like a MIDI demo. Now I've got a MIDI demo with an amazing drum track. And that's awesome. And then it's like, oh, I know this guy who'd be an amazing bass player for this. And now, so you go and you find the right person for the job, and then you got a drum track and a bass. And then you get all the way out to mixing, and then you get out to mastering. And then you get out beyond that to all
Before you know it, you've got Bob Ludwig mastering your track, and you're listening to it while he's doing it.
Exactly.
Sorry, Bob. We'll name drop. We'll get you on board soon.
Yeah, well, there's name drop. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, honestly, it's really hard not to name drop, and that's only saying that it's really hard not to name drop because so many of the people that we talk with on a daily basis are very well-known people.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing because the way that you connect with them, we're all just humans and we're all just trying to make music. Well, not all of us, but those of us that are trying to make music are trying.
We'll get into that in a second.
more easily than it has been in the past. And now with remote recording, it changes everything, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, rapid fire here. We got a couple of things to address. Stone International, Stone Ingram says, I want my Sessionwire t-shirt. Where can I get it? We'll send you one, Stone. We'll send you one. But we will have a merch store up and running soon. If it's not already up and running, is it up and running?
It's ready to go, but I don't think it's online
Okay,
yet.
we will have Sessionwire merch. Stone, we'll be in touch. Brad Prosco says, just a shout out for the over-the-top tech support you guys have been providing. It really makes a difference. Yes, that is one of the key things that we are trying to do with Sessionwire. Being the consumer facing or the user facing, I hate saying consumer, being the user facing person with Sessionwire, I want to make Sessionwire, and we all do, we want to make Sessionwire the tool that everybody wants to use. And along with that comes a personal one-on-one support system, because everybody that uses Sessionwire is using different software, a different piece of hardware, a different operating system, different routing. All of these things combine to be, in some cases, a complete mess in terms of trying to set up remote collaboration. And having that one-on-one connection with somebody that can help you get set up is extremely important. And that's something that we're not going to drop. It's going to continue to be that way. We're going to have people who can connect with you one-on-one and help you get set up. Because, I mean, we understand you're in the middle of a session and you can't get something to work. You need to get it to work now. We're going to try and be there for that moment.
Absolutely. And support and that whole customer facing existence is in my DNA from back. You mentioned Radar earlier.
Yeah, I did.
My friend Barry Henderson, who is one of the creative forces behind the Radar as a product.
Can you define Radar for the kids out there that are under 30?
Random access disc audio recorder, and it took the big 2-inch tape machine, the 24-track tape machine that you'd see in all the old 70s movies when Sonny Bono had gold chains on and was playing the record producer or whatever. You don't even know who Sonny Bono is, probably, but anyway.
I don't.
Sonny and Cher, but anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, never mind then. I do.
Tape machine with a big fat tape with all the little meters on the front of it. That's what people used to record records on for decades. And the Radar came along, and it was this box, and it replaced one of those recorders, and it recorded everything on hard disk. So you're all going, yeah, so what? I've got a terabyte SSD in my MacBook Pro. What are you talking about? But this is going back a ways, and it was the first commercial disc audio recorder that sounded really good and worked like a tape machine. So it was a good bridge between using a tape machine and using a Radar, which was a tape machine without tape, basically. So he invited me into that company. There was a Japanese company that had licensed the technology called Otari, not Atari, but Otari. And they had the Otari Radar and the Otari Radar 2, but then their deal with the company came to an end, and Creation Technologies, which owned the technology, decided not to renew it. They started a new company called Is Technology. That's the long backstory. So anyway, he brought me on as a tech support guy, to create a tech support department, basically. He said, I want you to create legendary support. That's what we called it. So we actually had 24/7, like literally 24/7 support for the Radar. We had a guy sitting at a desk in the middle of the night, and these things happen to be reliable like you can't even imagine. So the guy was bored out of his tree, sitting there all night playing video games and doing whatever, but he was there. If somebody had a problem, he was there for that person. Eventually we rolled it back because it just became silly, because there was just no need for it.
Right.
We had an emergency number if something really went off the rails, but we moved heaven and earth to make sure, because we knew that people have these big sessions. They were used by huge bands like U2 and sound stages in Los Angeles. But that was sort of my foray into the technology world and professional audio technology, but it came in from support, and then I moved into product development.
Right.
And so I believe that support is a huge part of the product.
Yeah.
And I bet almost everybody on this feed can agree with that. Like, if you can get a product that works really well, but when you run into a bind, you can get help with it, then I'm in, right?
Yeah.
And you also pointed out something, just quickly, Sessionwire is really simple, But when you hit the boundary of Sessionwire integrating into somebody's studio, that's where the wheels can come off sometimes, because DAWs are not simple inherently, and most people don't use their DAWs in this way. Right, so when they download Sessionwire and it's like, well, how do I get all this working together? But trust me, once you've gone through the process and you understand the fundamental, it's very, very easy. But the support can really be a key thing. I think you alluded to helping people integrate Sessionwire, which is a simple tool, into their complicated studio.
Well, and let's just be clear. I mean, 90% of the time, everybody can set up the exact same way. And I'm going to switch to my my main monitor here, and it's just going to be my video. Sorry, Robin, I've kicked you out. Or unless, wait, do I have the? No, I don't have. I've got to build another scene for this, but I'm running Studio One, Persona Studio One. And everybody can run it this way. So the talkback stream of Sessionwire lives under this little microphone button. Set it up like you do any video conferencing software. In my case, I have a microphone plugged into channel 1 of my interface, and I'm listening to Robin come out of my interface. So the microphone is my microphone, and my speaker is my interface coming to my headphones. And then the HQ audio stream, which, as we talked about earlier, is it's a separate audio stream from the talkback stream. Talkback has echo suppression and noise cancellation on it and is mono. The HQ stream is stereo and streams at 48K 32-bit float equivalent. This drop down, the input, the source of this HQ stream is set to the Send plugin, the Sessionwire Send plugin from our suite of plugins. And the output, I'm actually going to change it back to my interface. So if Robin was to stream the audio, I would hear it straight out of my interface. The destination of the audio coming from Sessionwire on my machine is my interface. If I, in Studio One, like I have here, put the Sessionwire Send plugin on the main track and I hit play, Robin's going to hear what I stream to him. There's only one plugin that you need to set up 90% of the time to get streaming. The other 10% of the time, it's either because users don't have webcams with microphones on them, so TalkBack isn't easy to set up and you have to route it through the DAW, or they're using a Pro Tools HDX system, which is likely a large studio or post-production house. So, 90% of the time, it's as easy as putting one plugin in your session and away you go, because Sessionwire defaults to your system in and outs to begin with. So you should be able to call somebody and begin speaking with them with video like Robin and I are right now.
Yeah, that brings us to another interesting point of finding out what people need and how they use the tool. And I think when we first started creating Sessionwire, we're like, oh, they need a plugin for everything. We need a send and a receive and a talkback send and a talkback receive and all this, and we need templates that hook all this stuff up. But really, no, like what you just said is so true. Now with the app, with the defaults that it has, if you have a send plugin on both ends of the call, you're 90% of the way there to do just about anything with the app.
Speaking of anything, here's a question that we got from let me see here, Chris. No, let me see. For lack of better words, this is I know who this is. This is Ross. He says, "What's the weirdest use of Sessionwire you've encountered?" I'll start then.
All these names just popped into my head, and I can't mention any of them without getting a release sign. But go ahead.
No X-rated movies or anything like that.
Nothing like that. Just some interesting things with very famous people, like in their bedroom with their laptop, playing tracks. Huge people. But anyway,
yeah.
So like not in a studio, not in their kitchen. It's like they're just sitting on the edge of their bed with the laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah.
Anyway. I've had a few calls like that too. Again, can't name drop, but guaranteed that you've heard their music on the radio multiple times a day for the last couple of decades. Like people like that. I think the strangest use, or the most interesting for me, is that. There is a major motion picture studio that everybody's heard about, that you've seen movies from them everywhere. They're using Sessionwire to do remote Foley work. So they're running Sessionwire in a studio on a machine, on a Foley stage so that the producer, who is remote, across the country, can watch the video feed of this video game that they're producing. So they're watching this character do the movements, but they're listening to the Foley being performed on the stage live, in sync, across the country using Sessionwire. And that, to me, I've had the privilege of dropping in on a session while they're doing it. That is the weirdest thing, to see this cartoon character, CGI generated character, move at first with no sound. They go back and they say, okay, do the movement, or whatever they say, and they're climbing a ladder, and it's made out of chain, and it sounds like they're climbing this ladder, but it's happening in real time or live on the other side. That, to me, is one of the most interesting applications of Sessionwire so far.
I'm sure one of the things that we always talk about internally is we can't wait to see what people are going to do.
Yeah, and we want to see. So if you're doing weird stuff with it, send us videos and photos and. Oh man!
It was like that video we received from Chris, I believe his name is, with the Da Vinci thing.
Yeah.
And he was doing a thing between Austria and Belgium and showing how he was using Sessionwire to do his voiceover work and stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty awesome that people take the tool, they figure out how to do something in a workflow, and it just changes everything for them, because it's simple and it's inexpensive, and yeah.
Well, and oftentimes, in Chris's case, big shout out to Chris Lucasar in Austria. Had a conversation with him again today, and that's when he posts videos like that, oftentimes it's things we've never even realized is possible. So, for example, DaVinci Resolve has just come out with new ADR functionality. So you drop a video in and you're able to record ADR directly into DaVinci Resolve. But he was using Sessionwire to do it remotely. So you drop the video in and set up your cue points, and it automatically puts the countdown. Excuse my lack of knowledge about ADR terminology, but there's a countdown, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then there's a thing that moves in until you're supposed to start speaking, a cue point essentially, and it does it automatically. But he had discovered that using Sessionwire, he could do it remotely with a voice artist in Belgium, I think, right? Is that what you said? I think it was Belgium that his artist was in. Unbelievable. I never even thought of using DaVinci Resolve to do ADR directly.
Okay, here's one.
Yeah.
Again, I can't say the name, but a very large record company. If you think large record company and then you think larger record company, they are using Sessionwire for A&R, which is artist and repertoire. And so they're literally auditioning people using Sessionwire.
Yeah.
So the A&R representatives, I think I can't remember where they were. I'm just going to make it up from here on in, but I think they were in New York. The artist was, I believe, actually in Los Angeles. But anyway, they were definitely in remote locations, and the band was in a studio, and they essentially auditioned for the A&R people over Sessionwire. So that's pretty cool. So now all of the A&R people with that label are going to be using Sessionwire, and their studios are going to be hooked up using Sessionwire, so that they can have this musical conversation with potential signees to the label. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the number of strategic partnerships that are kind of in the works it's astounding that people, big companies are looking for simple solutions to these problems that they've had with connecting with their artists, and all-in-one solution for things. And it seems like Sessionwire is the solution to those issues for a large number of these gigantic companies and corporations, and let alone the individual artists and musicians, the basement musicians, the garage jammers, the indie artists.
It's interesting because it changes the dynamic of the interplay between these big companies and the people that are just in their basements or their barn out in the back making amazing music. There used to be this really giant void between I'm somebody that wants a record deal, and there's the guys that give out record deals over there, and it was almost impossible to get across that gulf.
Yep.
Well, now it's way different than that, and there are way more conduits for people to get discovered, and YouTube and Facebook and all these different kinds of things. So the record companies, you should know this, they're really actively looking for people that are talented out there. And this type of tool is one way, number one, to build a product that really gets noticed because it's amazing, because it's got the right people and it's produced at a budget that's not stupid. Like, there used to be like $3-5 million record budgets, and I mean, a lot of that was marketing and packaging and all that sort of stuff as well. But now those days are gone. I'm talking to another very well-known and famous person who is actually funding his own recording of his stuff, and he says, my manager asked to hear it. I said, no, I don't want the record company to hear it. I'm doing this for me. I'm paying for it myself. I'm hiring all my buddies, and you should hear his buddies.
Well, and I had the same conversation with him too, is he's wanting to do it like they used to do it. It's real music recorded live off the floor, the way that it used to be. And going back to a conversation we had earlier, we had the same conversation on the tour bus a couple of weekends ago. These kids these days are going back and discovering all of this old music and how it used to be created. I play a lot in the country scene, and kids, in their teens, they're now discovering Dwight Yoakam and Steve Earle, which, they were huge in the 80s and 90s. It's great. That's the way records used to be made, and they're phenomenal records. So, yeah, I'm really glad that this person that you're talking about is doing what he's done, and I told him that as well. And if Sessionwire is a part of that, then
but
amazing.
If he's going to make a record that has the sound quality of what used to be like multi-$100,000 budget record, or maybe even $1 million budget record. I mean, they used, the money they spent on records was just insane back in the day. But now if you can build something that's a similar quality for, maybe 10 or 20 grand, or even, some people could probably do it even less than that. I mean, we all know about the Billie Eilish thing and the thing getting produced in the bedroom, basically. So the scale of things is way different. The record companies understand that, and they're not necessarily looking to recreate the old model. They're looking at how can we find what's going on out there in social media land and all that sort of stuff, and draw that stuff into our distribution system, and get and they obviously they want to make money, but they're looking for talented people, and I think tools like Sessionwire and a lot of the services like Air Gigs, I give a plug out to those guys because I know they're a hardworking team as well. They have lots of professional musicians and service providers that are available for people to make their product better, and you pay them money, and so you should. Everybody should get paid, I think. And it returns value into the whole musical food chain, which has been largely eroded.
Well, I mean, just touching on something that you just brought up, the fact that people are making records that compare to the records that were made on $1 million budgets, that is reflected in the number of giant studios that have shut down. I mean, anybody that's seen the documentary Sound City from 2013, you'll kind of understand what's happening. Sound City was one of the studios in the world. Rage Against the Machine, Foo Fighters, you name it. Grammy Award winning records recorded in that studio no longer exists because those budgets just aren't there anymore for this music. So it is entirely possible for people to create Grammy Award winning art. I mean, there's a whole argument about whether or not the Grammys are
that's a separate discussion,
relevant. We can get into that another time. But the fact that there are records selling millions and millions and millions of downloads, that's also an oxymoron. The fact that people can make these kind of records at home, it's incredible. The last 10, 15 years, there's this giant shift from having to go places to make music to doing it in your basement, and having access to people through a tool like Sessionwire it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, well, the business has been broken for a long time, and it's just taken a long time to sort of crumble down. But again, without mentioning any names, I had some buddies that were playing in a band, and in Canada, everything in Canada is like a tenth of the U.S. essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything. I'm not a tenth of a person compared to somebody who lives down there or anything like that. But in terms of the economy and all that sort of stuff, so for instance, a platinum record in Canada is 100,000 units,
Mm-hmm.
not a million. So these guys were in a band. They recorded an album. It was multi-platinum. They went in for their second album, and they laid the whole thing on limo rides to the sushi bar, and the whole big thing, right? Not realizing, or maybe realizing, but not wanting to think about the fact that that money was going to come out of their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Because record companies don't do stuff for free.
The whole 360 deal thing. Yeah.
So anyway, I did the math. I'm sitting there going, okay, so they're spending X amount on this record, and I knew the number, and I calculated the number of times they would have to go platinum in Canada before they started receiving their whatever it was 10 cents on the a dollar record that they split 5 ways.
Yeah.
And the math wasn't pretty, and I went, this is broken. Like, this is not a sustainable thing. And sure enough, it's only the stratospheric acts where they put in the huge promotion budgets where it just becomes a mathematical equation. If we put X million of dollars into promoting this thing, doesn't matter what it sounds like, as long as the person has some kind of an image they can sell it all day long, and they can make their money back times whatever the number is. But it really doesn't have anything to do with the sound of the music or anything like that, because it just doesn't.
Yeah.
So if there is going to be a return to that kind of meaningful artistic statement in music and the songs that people really emotionally resonate and all that sort of stuff, it's going to come from the grassroots up.
Yeah.
It can't come from anywhere else. So
Agreed.
Tools like Sessionwire and these communities are, I believe, the future of that type of music. That doesn't mean the other type of music is going to go away, because if there's money to be made, then people will make it with however they can. And
yeah,
if that works, well, it's great. But some people like music, but they like music in a way that it's just kind of something that they vacuum the floor to, or it's sort of a context for their social relationships or whatever that's out there. And I'm not trying to, again, put that down or make that seem insignificant, but when you go back and listen to certain types of music, or even a lot of music today that I hear, some of it makes you want to lie flat out on the carpet in the dark and just go, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it takes you somewhere. It's just incredible, incredibly enjoyable, and it's at the top of its game artistically.
Yeah.
So whether or not there's going to be enough people in the world that care about that, I think, given the stats I just mentioned about what's going on in streaming media with 70% or 60% or whatever it was of people going into the back catalog, I think that's a pretty telling statistic.
Yes.
That they're not finding. And I'm not saying, I know my wife's out there, I'm not saying it's not there now in the new artists. I know there are artists out there that are every bit as good or even better than artists from back there, but what is different is they're invisible.
Yeah, it's so saturated. What is it? Every day, how many hours of music is released?
Well, this article said 60,000 songs a day.
60,000 songs a day.
Yeah.
A day. And back in the 70s and 80s, what was it?
It was a guy
Way
that showed up at
less.
the radio station with a little briefcase with a bunch of 45s in it and a bag of Coke.
Yeah, that's right. Play this song.
Tickets to the game and whatever.
Yeah.
I actually was at an interesting seminar. This is kind of way off topic, but it was kind of funny even back in the day. A songwriting seminar, and Bruce Allen was there, and the manager of a band called Styx was there, and a bunch of industry heavyweights.
Yeah. For all you kids who don't know, Styx wrote the song "Come Sail Away," which I'm sure you've heard. It's my go-to karaoke song.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Great song.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's a great album. Grand Illusion is an amazing album.
It's so good.
But anyway, they were having this discussion, and somebody piped up from the audience and said, "So how much does it cost to get a hit song? And Bruce Allen said, without blinking, a number. I think it was $250,000. That's what you pay. And there's this thing out there called the network, and you pay the money to the network, and your song goes up the charts, and away you go.
For everybody that doesn't know about payola, do a quick Google search.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's no different really today. It's just a different, it's a different system, and
Yeah.
it's sort of above board. But that's what I mean. If you put in
Barely.
$2 million in to promote something, it's going platinum, and there's nothing anybody can do about it because
Yep.
it's just the way the machine is created. But the interesting thing that he said was, and I hope I'm not. I think I'm free to talk about this because I went to a public thing and he was talking about it.
Right.
But he was talking about Loverboy in particular, and how the then president of their record label decided he was going to boycott the network. He'd had enough of the network. And so Loverboy started up the charts, and then all of a sudden they started down the charts.
Right.
So he arranged for that little problem to be taken care of, and then the rest is history. So now everybody's working for the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Where's my... I have this book here somewhere. Dang it.
Sean says he'll do it for $1 and a Big Mac.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, don't do that. Also, don't undervalue yourself.
Do it for 2 Big Macs.
Yeah. Mixing. Yeah, it mixes band records on headphones. Yeah, I mean, mixing on headphones or not, it doesn't matter what you mix on. You just need to know what you're listening to, and you can make great sounding records. We have a couple questions from KR. Just before we get to those, though, I want to just grab this book here. This book, The Gospel According to Luke. For anybody that doesn't know, I am a huge Toto fan, and this book is amazing. But Steve Lukather in this book talks about the record labels that, Toto were signed to. The head of the record label actively tried to suppress their success. And because they didn't have any support from that guy, they didn't break in America. Like, they never really broke in America. You've heard their singles, Africa, Hold the Line, Rosanna, whatever. But overseas, huge. Asia, huge. Europe, huge. America, not, because they didn't have that support. They boycotted the network type thing, they didn't boycott it, but they were actively blocked from that network.
Yeah, and so as much as record companies did a service by surfacing all that music and getting it out there so we could hear it and enjoy it and stuff, there was a lot of shenanigans that were really destructive to. I know of several artists personally who recorded whole albums and they just said that we're not releasing it.
Yeah.
And the artist couldn't do anything with that music because it was owned lock, stock, and barrel by the label, so it's sitting there rotting in a vault somewhere. So they poured their lifeblood into these recording projects, and it's just sitting there, and nobody will ever hear it.
Yeah.
So it really, there was a lot of politics and big business and all that sort of stuff. But Lukather is one guy that I really, if you're out there, I really want to get
Steve,
on Sessionwire, because he always talks.
Call us.
Things, how things were. Like, he talked about playing a thing with Quincy Jones being right in his face, and about when somebody's playing a drum groove and where everybody's fitting in the pocket, and one guy's a little ahead and this is a little behind and this one's right in the middle, and everybody settles into this groove. I mean, grooves and stuff like that, I'm talking to a drummer here, are incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
And when everything is just like drum machine quantized, it's a sound, and a lot of people like that sound. I mean, there's the whole beat making thing and all that sort of stuff, and that's cool for a certain type of music. There's no question about it. But when you get into the sort of more organic stuff, if you're trying to use a drum machine for that, you're going to be selling yourself short, because it's not going to, unless you get in there and dial around and you're just like shifting things around and what are you trying to do? You're trying to humanize it.
Yeah.
Well, I got a human right here on Sessionwire.
Get him to play it.
To play the drums like crazy.
Yeah.
So why don't I get him to do it? And I can spend 16 hours in Logic trying to humanize my drum track, or Brendan can blast it off in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we can drink beer and talk about other stuff.
Good. I like that idea. Speaking of, we're past the 2-hour mark, just so everybody knows. This is by far the longest live stream I've ever done, which is amazing. I think we're really touching on some great things. We got a couple of notes from KR here I just want to touch on. KR, I would love to see the ability to plug your interface and mic and connect to Sessionwire directly for performance purposes. That would be amazing. Surprise! It is possible right now. I'll share my screen again, just briefly to touch on this. So I'll make sure that I'm actually sharing it. Yes, so in Sessionwire, under the HQ audio stream, you can select any device as an input and any device as an output. So you could essentially set the input and output of the HQ stream as your interface so that I could listen to what Robin is streaming to me and sing along to it and send that vocal part straight back to Robin, and he can record it in his DAW. That is, however, not how we recommend using Sessionwire due to latency, because if we were to do that, if I was to sing along to something that Robin streamed to me and he was to record my vocal directly into his DAW, he would hear me behind his music by however much latency there is in the internet between the two of us. However, for workflows, when you're doing ADR or voiceover work, it's not a huge issue because there's not you don't have to sing in time or say the words in time. If you're doing ADR, you can slide those parts forward, line them up in the timeline, and you're fine. So I hope that answers that question. And he had a little expansion on that. So the artist doesn't always need a DAW to stream an audio back to the host. No, you do not need a DAW open in Sessionwire ever, really, if you need to work that way. Again, there's an infinite number of ways you can use software like Sessionwire along with your software and hardware. It's up to your workflow and how you would like to use it.
Yeah, and if you're a real techie type person, there are ways that you can mitigate the delay by delaying your local monitor tracks. But it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not even really, I don't think, really worth it. There's other workflows that are way easier to do and much more efficient and satisfying.
Yeah.
But there is something coming down the road that's going to speak to that exact issue, and I've given it a name, and I guess I'll let the name out. No, I better not.
No. I was gonna say no.
Watch this space at some point in the future, and,
yeah,
and we'll let it drop. But it addresses the issue of being able to monitor, send a monitor from point A to point B, receive the performance from point B back to point A, and not have to deal with any of the latency issues when you're monitoring.
Yeah, anybody that knows software like VST Connect, it's they have made it possible, albeit with a lot of complications. It's complicated to set up. It doesn't work a lot of the time, not to throw Steinberg under the bus, but we have people come to Sessionwire saying that they've tried these other solutions and they're just not easy enough to use. So our end goal with these features is to make them functional and easy to use so that, again, you can get straight to the creative part, making music.
Yeah, that's the whole point. We hope that you never even think about Sessionwire, but use it every day.
Yeah. Fun fact, that Ross just threw out here, just talking about the number of tracks released every day and what happened in the 60s. 60,000 tracks uploaded to Spotify every day in 2021. Less than 5,000 albums released in all of 1968. Let's think about that for a minute. So that's 50,000. Let's say an album is an average of 10 tunes. That's 50,000 songs in all of 1968.
Well, it's interesting how technology empowers people, but at the same time it creates new problems. And one of the things is, like, when people used to publish a book, they would get promoted, people would get the book, they'd read the book, they'd chew on the book, they'd think about the book, they'd talk about the book. Now it's like, with the advent of the blog and everything, the blogosphere and everything, the proliferation of written stuff, it's just overwhelming to the point where now people read literally the H1 on the webpage and just scan. They've had to, as a survival mechanism, they've had to learn how to ignore stuff
Yeah.
because there's just too much of it. There's too much written word, and now on the internet, it's like about video, and it's about not a 3-minute video. It's about a 5-second video. It's about a clip going by in some social media app, and they try and catch your attention. And if they miss, it's so. There was a book called "Amusing Ourselves to Death" that you should Google and you should read it, because this has all been predicted, lock, stock, and barrel, and it goes back to way in the past when things were much different, and so we have to accept the new reality on some level, but it doesn't mean we have to stay in that place if it's not where we want to stay. I don't want to stay that way, but I will say one thing about the new music business is that you can now feel more free than ever before in human history to just make the music that you want to make.
Yeah.
You don't have to be looking over your shoulder going, oh, I wonder what the record labels want this year. Or do I have to get a different haircut? And, what do I need to change in my album? What producer do I need to get? I want to be a success in this business. Well, that ship has sailed, except for this microscopic fraction of the musical society, which isn't even all that musical. It's more about entertainment and marketing and packaging and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, if you're a creator listening in on this call or at some point in the future, you've got tools, you've got access to stuff that nobody in history has ever had before.
Yeah.
You've got incredible recording technology on your computer. Now with Sessionwire and other apps like it, you have access to people that also have the same technology that you do. And so it's like a giant LAN party for musicians, and we can connect and we can make stuff that's really cool, and we don't have to raise $500,000 or $1 million and go into the studio to get a good product. We can put our heads together, we can all throw our hat in the ring and do it all for free, basically. Yeah. Except for your Sessionwire subscription.
Subscription or new Session Pass. Yeah.
Yay.
So just for everybody watching, Session Pass, you can buy a 3-day artist membership. 3 days, you get all features for $7 USD. And after those 3 days, it shuts off. No subscription, because we know subscriptions bother a lot of people, ourselves included.
And let's not forget about the value, and Brendan, let's not forget about the value of our free creator plan.
Yeah.
With the creator plan, you get video conferencing, no time limit. You don't even get that with Zoom. So that's cool. You get the ability to do peer-to-peer file transfer. I can drag a file onto Brendan's face. We call it face drag internally. And I just drag it on, drop it on Brendan's face. He gets a little progress bar, and it asks him where to store the file on his hard drive. You get that for free.
Yep.
You can do high-resolution screen sharing, so you can see each other's workstations or lyric sheets or whatever you're working on. You get that for free.
Yeah.
You get the ability to connect to a growing network of people on the community site. You get that for free. And then, if you want to use the high-quality audio and plugins, you can easily, in about 10 seconds, click the button, buy the session pass, activate the session pass, and you can be using the plugins for 3 days for $7.
Right here.
And then when at the end of 7 days, you can no longer use the HQ audio and the plugins, but it goes back to having all the other creator functions. So again, we're not trying to do this to coerce people into this place where they have to open their wallet and stuff like that. We want to give people the ability to join the community, participate in, and find a lot of value in it, even if they don't have an artist membership all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that tied into another question here. Let me just. I think we're reaching the end of the broadcast, I think, but Chris Nunn says, I would like to see a way to group / filter potential collaborators by country and regional information. You can do that. There are tags. There's a tagging system. You can add tags to your profile, and people can search for you by tags or search for musicians by tags. And that functionality will only be expanded with upcoming releases. And
well, that sounded like you're just specifically talking about geography.
Specifically geography, but yeah. I apologize. I've generalized it a little bit.
We are going to be adding the location field, and we may even add a radius field.
Yeah.
As well. So if you want somebody within 50 miles of wherever you're
at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Lots of features coming to the community side, which is the website, community.sessionwire.com in the future. Nice. Chris Nunn says, nice, with an exclamation mark. Excellent. And KR says, and soon remote control. Yes, KR. Remote Sessionwire remote is coming soon.
It's there already for preview, and if anybody's interested in that particular functionality, you can contact us offline and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Released it to the Wire community in probably the release after next, I think.
Yeah, there's a contact form on our website, www.sessionwire.com. You can reach out to us through, once you've signed up, the community site where your profile and the community and how you reach out to other people is all hosted at community.sessionwire.com. So once you are signed up, community.sessionwire.com is where you want to be. We'll get into that when I get into the wrap up here, but I just want to make sure we have addressed all of these questions here.
I did see something way back about personas and Sphere. And
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. So, yes. Love persona stuff. And actually, Rick, one of the founding.
Shout out to Rick and John. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about Rick, the co-founders of Sessionwire. We went to Louisiana, to Baton Rouge, to Louisiana State University, and did a presentation for the Red Stick Festival. Get it? Red Stick Baton Rouge. I didn't get it until I actually went there, and I'm like, Red Stick. Oh, okay, I get it.
Baton Rouge.
Yeah, Baton Rouge. Anyway, we were able to go over to Personas, and we met with Jim Odom and Jim Boydnott and a bunch of the guys there. Showed us the studio. We showed them Sessionwire. And ever since then, we've sort of had a really good rapport. And I love their company, and their company very similar in feel to Sessionwire, in that they're, the people that were there at the beginning are still there, and they're very passionate about their product, and they're always trying to improve it. And really great company. And we hope to. We've been looking at the possibility of maybe putting together little packages and things like that for specific applications. And of course, they have a really great product. I'll give a shout out to their Revelator. There you go.
It's backwards in the stream.
Product placement right there.
Coming soon, Revelator review.
It's got a loop back function, so it makes it really easy for doing, streaming and, everything like stuff that we're doing right now. So, and it's got DSP built in, for various different vocal effects for compression and
podcasting, voiceover, vocal performances.
But we want to work with everybody, and we tell everybody that we want to work with all of the companies as much as they will have us, because you all use their products, and we don't want to ever make the world smaller for musicians. We want to make it bigger, and so that's our part of our core vision for the company. So
excellent. Make sure that we've Amac. Oh, nice. Hi, Brandon. Thanks again for the support this morning. Just heard you guys mention remote. That will make our supports with clients be an amazing experience. So looking forward to this. Yes, remote is coming. Andrew is in Australia, and we connected today. Again, streaming audio back and forth. Never gets old.
No, never gets old. No.
Yeah, good to see you, Andrew. Thanks for dropping by. Sorry, this is the tail end of the live stream. We're now reaching, if I'm not mistaken, 2 hours and 16 minutes. So I think that this is a good place to wind up. Robin, stick around for a minute after I end this. But I just want to thank you for joining me. I'll be hosting a lot of these over the next months. I mean, into infinity. We're going to try and make these kind of things a monthly occurrence, these live Q&As where you can ask us questions about Sessionwire, how to set up, how to stream, the realities of remote collaboration, whatever you want to ask us about. Thanks, Robin, for joining.
Oh, you're welcome.
I talk to you every day, but...
Yeah, well, no, and thank you, everybody that joined on the live stream. It's great to have you here, and if you have any questions, we're all ears all the time. Just drop us a line if you have feature requests or bug reports, or you need help with remote recording in general, or if there's resources that you feel would be helpful. let us know. That's what we're here for, is to help you. So.
Absolutely. And if you want to reach out to us, if you go to community.sessionwire.com or www.sessionwire.com, there's a little chat bubble in the bottom right-hand corner of the window. You can usually get at somebody through there. You can also reach out to us at support@sessionwire.com. We have a support website, support.sessionwire.com. You can go check out articles about anything to do with Sessionwire. I'm also starting to add articles about more broad subjects such as latency and why jamming or rehearsing is not possible. That's actually a great article written by Robin called Latency versus the Speed of Light that everybody should read because it throws to light why it's not possible. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us. These will become a regular occurrence. We're going to be doing live streams regarding every DAW as well in the future. So you have questions about Logic, we're going to have a Logic live Q&A. You want questions about Digital Performer, we're going to have a Digital Performer live Q&A. We're going to do these things quite often, so feel free to drop in when you can. I'm sure you'll hear about us. I had somebody ask way up in the thread, hey, you're Brennan, the guy that sends us all of those emails all of the time, and a sarcastic face, I think. So yes, that's me. Actually, it's an automated program that sends most of them out. But yes, my face is on a lot of them, so apologies in advance for the abundance of emails. But again, we want to keep people up to date on what we're doing and new releases with the Sessionwire ecosystem and breaking changes and maintenance periods and all of this kind of stuff. We just want to keep you up to date. So if that's bothering you, there's an unsubscribe button in the bottom corner of those emails. But I hope that you won't click that and that you'll respond back. Hey, I'm using it for this. Here's a screenshot. Here's a screencast. Here's a live broadcast we're doing a Sessionwire. We want to hear from you. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Like if you're using Sessionwire, let us know. We'd love to share that with the world too, because that's what it's all about. How are people using the product? And if you're using it even in some way that you don't think is that unique, if you're just using it, send us screenshots or whatever you got, and we'd love to see it.
Absolutely. Well, from everybody on the Sessionwire team, thanks everybody for joining us. You can expect to hear about another live stream shortly. Like I said, we'll be scheduling them regularly. It's looking like Wednesday evenings I'll be hosting at least somebody on one of these broadcasts or talking about real collaboration. So hope to see you on another one in the future.